Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we have full amount of time. Welcome again, everyone. I'm Dr. Michael Dixon. I'm the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies. It's a pleasure to welcome you here today to this event, to this workshop that we have on creating an effective LinkedIn profile. We decided to put this event together primarily for the purpose of celebrating the closing of Graduate Student Appreciation Week, which we've been trying to celebrate in a variety of ways this week. We had an event yesterday that several attended, and this is, really the culminating event of the week. And it's also meant to provide you, as our current graduate students, with a developmental opportunity, as many of you will be graduating in a month or so, perhaps embarking on a search for a new job or a transition in your career, or getting ready for that further down the line. But we really wanted to put something together for you that would allow you to leverage LinkedIn as part of that process. So again, it is a pleasure seeing on the screen here many names, many individuals whom I've known for a while, and some newer individuals as well, whom I met sort of virtually through the admissions process. But this is going to be a great event. I'm going to introduce in a moment our three panelists. But I really also wanted to say that another reason for doing this, in addition to helping you with your branding of yourself as you look for a job, as you work through your navigation of your career, I also wanted to use this as a moment to let you know that we are hoping that you'll leverage LinkedIn as well to join the network of current graduate students at USI and alumni. So we do have a LinkedIn page for the USI School of Graduate Studies. And if you do not currently follow it, I hope that when the event this afternoon concludes, you will go ahead and do so. So I'm going to introduce now our panelists. We're then going to have basically a conversation walking through the key elements as we see them for an effective LinkedIn profile. So first, I'd like to introduce Lindsey Gibson. She currently serves as the Academic Affairs CRM Manager. She works in the School of Graduate Studies and has for some time, previously as our marketing and recruitment specialist. And she does the managing of the School of Graduate Studies social media. Secondly, Kaylee Johnson, who is a alumna of the Master of Arts in Communications program. I should have mentioned that Lindsey is an MBA alumna as well. But Kaylee is USI's media relations specialist. Some of you may have had the pleasure of attending in person or virtually Kaylee's presentation last night. She presented at USI's Social Media Symposium. Her talk was Behind the Screens: The Strategy, Wins, and Chaos of Managing USI's Socials. It was a great event if you were able to see it. And lastly, Kaylee Simmons, who is an employee at USI in our human resources area, and she is an employment specialist. So I've asked these three to come here for a very intentional reason. Each brings a very unique perspective on social media and LinkedIn and marketing and recruiting. So I'm really going to lean on Kaylee Johnson and Lindsey Gibson to provide their input on the elements of an effective LinkedIn profile from the perspective of someone who manages social media, who manages marketing. And I'm going to lean on Kaylee Simmons a lot as someone who's an HR employment specialist. And what does she look for when she's engaged in recruiting potential job applicants on LinkedIn? What are the things that she likes to see? And lastly, I'll say that the four of us have met. We've talked about how we're going to go through this presentation, and there is, I think you'll see and hear, there's no right answer. There's no one answer. A lot of it is subjective. So take what you hear from our experts, uh, and utilize that information in a way that will allow you to build your profile on LinkedIn in what you think is the most effective way. I'd add also as well that you can probably find lots of other YouTube videos and other information online as well that will include information, some of which is very much in line with what we share with you today, but may have some different perspectives as well. Again, there is no right answer. So I think is a person who doesn't exist, and we'll sort of go through that profile and talk about with you what are the important pieces. So obviously looking at this LinkedIn profile, the first thing that pops out is the profile picture. Lindsey and Kaylee Johnson, could you talk a little bit to us about the types of profile pictures on LinkedIn that are most effective from your perspective, and some things that one ought to avoid in the creation of their profile?
Sure. Yeah. So
Go
I
first.
think
Yeah.
it mainly deal like you really should think of the industry you're either going into or currently in, and potentially looking the part in that image. But you definitely want like a high quality image, something that just shows you. And that, Kaylee, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm not on the recruiting side like Haley Simmons, but from my perspective, working and managing the university's LinkedIn, I would say whenever I'm interacting with students, potential students, employers, whatever it might be, I'm looking for a photo that represents them, like Lindsay said, in a positive professional light, depending on your industry. Again, I'm not in a recruiting standpoint where I'm actively working with potential employers, that kind of thing, but if I'm interacting with students, for example, I want to know that they're reputable and professional in whatever endeavors that they're posting about.
And Kaylee Simmons, from your perspective as a recruiter, as an employment specialist, what are your thoughts?
I definitely agree. We want something that looks professional. I think this picture looks very professional. It's just that headshot. I always say to try to keep your picture pretty up to date. I actually recently just updated my picture this week. Mine was a little bit outdated. I had kind of a bob haircut. So I always say to kind of like maybe keep them up to date, and just keep them professional. So I know sometimes you might not have access to getting a headshot somewhere, or may not have the funds to do that. So a selfie is okay if it doesn't look like a selfie. If you're not doing it from like all the way up to kind of get down on that angle, maybe do something more head on, with a really like blank background or something solid.
I would say at USI, just to kind of chime in a little bit, I know with our career services department, I know they just went through a renaming and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not going to try to say it right now, but career services formerly, they do a lot of career fairs on campus. And if you're local, they do headshot opportunities there as well that could give you a very good headshot. So like Kaylee Simmons said, just making sure that you're positioning yourself with a plain background, buy a little selfie light, that kind of thing. You can probably make it work that way too.
Yeah, I think like, the resolution should probably be very high as well. I mean, some profile pictures one sees out there are a little bit blurry or grainy. Yeah, I think that's not like necessarily the image that one wants to project. One can see in this image, behind the profile picture itself, there's another image. I think it's referred to in LinkedIn language as the background photo. If you don't add one here, it will just be a generic empty background. But a lot of people, I think, would argue that the background photo is not as important necessarily as the profile picture, but does play an important role in getting noticed at this very top part of one's profile. Any thoughts from uh, Lindsey, Kaylee Johnson, or Kaylee Simmons on the significance of the background photo?
think definitely just having one is good rather than having something blank. Like Dr. Dixon mentioned, there are some options where you can just select some pre-selected ones. For example, I have mine as kind of the USI or the University of Southern Indiana, kind of from the entrance near the roundabout. Just so whenever somebody does come on my profile, they're like, oh, they either work at USI or they went there. So it kind of is a little bit more eye-catching.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that wherever you're working, if you're happy where you're working, I know in the example here it says like open to work. So if you're presently at an organization like we're working at USI, presently not necessarily open to work, having an image of your organization, I think is very credible. And it, like Kaylee said, when from her standpoint, when she's reaching out to potential employers, that gives her some more credibility in terms of showing where she's coming from, that kind of thing. From the organizational side, like running the USI account, I would say my main concern with the header image or the background image that they call it is making sure that it's good quality, because that's kind of a hard ratio to fit. So making sure that you can, I guess, find a really skinny, wide photo that is still good-ish quality would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with both Kaylee's. A high quality image is needed here. And I know that there's a lot of free image resizer tools online. So if you have something that would work as your background image, but it doesn't quite meet the LinkedIn size, I would look online for a free resizer tool to fit the needs.
Perfect. Kaylee Johnson mentioned the profile picture here in our example profile contains the frame with the hashtag open to work. I see that on a lot of profiles as I looked in LinkedIn. From a recruiter's perspective, Kaylee, is that something that you really look for, or how does that frame on a LinkedIn profile picture play any role, or does it not play a role at all in your attempts to identify possible job candidates?
Great question. So I will say it helps me easily identify candidates who are open to new opportunities and who may be more likely to respond to my messages whenever I'm talking about USI opportunities. But I do also understand that sometimes people may not want to publicly display to their employer that they are looking elsewhere. A lot of times that is something they want to keep private until they have a new opportunity kind of in the works. So I will say I reach out either way, whether there is that open to work banner or whether there's not. But I definitely think if you are, actively looking and you are comfortable having that on there, it doesn't hurt.
Perfect. I wanted to mention as well, I forgot at the outset that the chat is open at any time. Please feel free to drop some questions into the chat, but we're also hoping that we can have some time at the end to allow anyone in attendance today to ask some questions. But by all means, let us know as you have one straight away. So as we move down the profile a little bit below the profile picture and the background photo, we see the individual's name. She here has decided to include her pronouns in her profile, and that's an option that LinkedIn gives to all users. That is completely optional as to whether or not one wants to include that or not. And, depending on your preference and, the industry in which you work, you may want to make that decision as to whether or not you wish to include that. We don't have it here, but I believe only on, and correct me if I'm wrong to our panelists, that I believe it's only on the mobile version of LinkedIn that one has the opportunity to add I think it's like up to a 40-second audio clip that allows one to pronounce their name. If you have a name that sometimes individuals have difficulty pronouncing or might pose some challenge to someone who doesn't know you, that's a great way to ensure that someone reaching out to you has the correct pronunciation of your name. But below her name, you'll see the headline, and here she has her title, Innovation Strategist, then transforming ideas into impact, championing creativity and collaboration. Lindsey, can you start out by telling us your views on that headline and its importance from your perspective and the type of thing that one should include there?
Yeah, so that headline is meant to be a very short area where you can kind of highlight some key areas that you're either interested in working or currently working in. I know that there are a ton of AI features where you can kind of plug in a formula to get the correct information that you would like to share there. But I think keeping that kind of short, sweet, with some really key highlights in your industry that an employer may be really interested in knowing about you is key there.
Kaylee Simmons, do you utilize that headline much in identification of job candidates? You know, how does that stand out to you?
Definitely. That is something that I look at kind of when I'm in that recruiter seat, kind of looking through different profiles. It's something that kind of shows up. So it's definitely something that I'm looking at. I know a lot of people I know me, for example, I have my title, I say employment specialist at University of Southern Indiana. So I know sometimes if people are actively already working somewhere, they might include that. So it's always great because then I might be like, oh, that's a very similar title to this one position I'm looking to fill. And it might prompt me to reach out, or those keywords that are those industry keywords also help me know like, okay, this is in line with what they're looking for. So I think it's a great touch, and definitely keeping it short and sweet is best.
And Kaylee Johnson, any thoughts to add?
Sorry, couldn't get to my unmute button quick enough. I don't have a lot. I'm just kind of looking at my personal LinkedIn as we're talking, because looking at it from my perspective, managing the universities, I don't pay much attention to that. Ours is short and sweet. Again, like Kaylee and Lindsay said, but I think when I'm interacting with students or potential employers, I definitely think that would be something that I would look at just to see how they're involved with our institution. But I would say definitely Kaylee and Lindsay are probably using that and looking at it more than I am.
I've seen it said that you know, if you are in a job right now and you're not actively looking for one, it's a good idea to list your current position and your place of employment, and that it might be a subtle way of stating to those looking at your profile that you are not necessarily looking for a job or not necessarily open to work like the frame indicates, but that something you know, I don't want to say generic, but you know, something like the example here, but that doesn't indicate, you know, an exact position and a place of employment, might be a way to convey to a recruiter or someone in the HR environment that, you know, you are amenable to being recruited.
I
I'm
did
so
want
sorry.
to
There
quickly
for a second. Could you repeat what you were asking me, Dr. Dixon? I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's okay. I'm sorry about that. You know, does the inclusion of one's place of employment and title in the headline maybe convey that you are, you know, sort of comfortable in your current position and not necessarily actively looking for other opportunities in any way?
I personally don't think so, because I kind of go back to before I started at USI and my last employer. I had my title kind of in there, and I was still actively looking for some other opportunities. So it doesn't personally for me, whenever I'm looking through those profiles, if I see they have that title, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to skip them, they're probably not interested. I'm going to go ahead and reach out, because I'm going to just kind of assume like, okay, they're already in this industry. I'm going to assume they're already still interested in that. And then during that time, whenever I message them, if they're kind of looking outside of that, or they're not happy or whatever it might be, they can then message me and tell me like, oh, you know, I'm happy where I am, or I'm actually looking to get out of this industry, or whatever it may be. So it doesn't affect me either way. I will reach out to them no matter what.
Kaylee Simmons, again, maybe something that we'll circle back to later, but anyone who's been on LinkedIn at any time knows that they're very aggressive in encouraging you to sign up for a premium account. And that's sometimes comes with a trial period for no payment, but that subsequently there is a charge. I think it's like $29.99 or something a month. But somewhat along that line, particularly from someone in your perspective, do you have to have a professional and paid version or a premium version to add certain key points at the top of a profile? And do you know like where one might open, where one might add those?
Sure. So I know whenever you have premium, it does give you some more like AI options where it will like, it kind of looks over your profile and it gives you some suggestions on how to enhance them. I don't think it lets you like add anything additional to your keywords already, other than just maybe making those enhancements. But from my perspective, I don't think it's completely necessary. If you do have the extra money and you're wanting to kind of do that each month, I definitely feel free to, especially if you're on the job hunt. I will say, if you're happy where you're at and you're not actively searching, I don't think it's completely necessary, just because whenever you do have that premium and you're kind of actively looking, LinkedIn will start kind of sending you more opportunities that it thinks you could be interested in. So whenever you're kind of looking kind of at the jobs tab on there, it might say your profile is a good match, or you measure up, you have more skills for this compared to some other applicants that have applied, or you match these skills to apply. So it provides a little bit more on the metric side, and it might even tell you, 20 people have applied. So it kind of lets you know what you're going up against as well. So I do think it's very beneficial during that time, but it also, if you want to do the 7-day free trial, whenever you're kind of getting your LinkedIn started or just kind of wanting to make some enhancements, I think that's fine too, just to kind of get your profile up and running, but just make sure to cancel that if you're not wanting to spend the $29.99 a month. But on my end, I will say, whether you're premium or you just have a basic LinkedIn account, I'm going to reach out. Actually, in my recruiter seat, I don't even see that. It doesn't tell me like who's premium and who's not, unless I actively go in and look at their profile from a different seat. So it's not going to tell me either way whenever I'm just kind of sourcing through applicants. So you don't have to, or we're still going to reach out to you. And kind of on another personal note, whenever I was coming to USI and kind of actively looking, I did not have a premium at that time. And I was able to kind of still reach out to the recruiter and kind of talk a little bit more about the position I'm currently in.
Perfect. I got a question for the three of you, and that is whether or not there is a way to signal to others that you are open to work, without using the frame. Like I don't want my current boss to know I'm looking for a job, but I do want to look for a job.
I would say, go ahead, Kaylee, you go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a good question, because I've been
Yeah.
trying to like think of that myself, just because they're really, I understand if you're not wanting it to be public. I definitely understand that. One thing I kind of have mentioned a couple times, if I see that you have some of those skills that I'm already looking for, I'm going to reach out whether you say you're open to work or not. Just because if you're matching some of those keywords, skills, locations, some of those things I'm looking in my recruiter seat, I want to go ahead and reach out to you and put that opportunity in front of you, because maybe somebody's not looking, but then a message prompts them to be like, that does sound like a good opportunity. It does sound like something I'm interested in. I also think possibly, starting to follow some new industries that you are interested in working in could be beneficial as well. And connecting with some of those people in industries that you might want to work in to kind of get like that insider's perspective in a way. And then it also kind of puts your name in the back of their head if they see you interacting with their posts and whatnot, which I know Kaylee Johnson probably is going to touch on as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, just like interacting with the organizations, the recruiters that you're interested in, if it's a specific industry. So I know we talked the other day a little bit before when we were talking about this conversation, and whenever students tag USI, University of Southern Indiana, in their post, whether it's about a recent trip that they went on and they earned an achievement, or a class that they just finished and they wanted to talk about their final project, whatever it might be, if they're tagging USI, I'm seeing that, and it's just bringing up some general awareness around their name. And I'm seeing how involved they are in, say, for example, that they were to apply for a position at USI. I could connect with Kaylee Simmons if, I had seen this person and I see an open position, and maybe recommend that she reach out to that person to see if they would be a good fit for the position. So it just brings some awareness, if you're interacting with who you're interested in working for.
Lindsey, any additional thoughts to add?
I agree. I think that if I were looking at a profile and didn't see open to work, I don't think I would skip over that necessarily, but I'm also not on that side of the hiring. So but I think either way would be fine.
So we got another question in the chat that I'm going to hold off on that one for now, and we'll circle back to it, but it has to do with the types of things that one is looking for in that recruiting process. Kaylee Johnson mentioned a few minutes ago that, in addition to looking at the profile that we have up here on the screen, that she also has on the other screen, her own profile, which I do too. I have mine. And as I look at mine next to Greater Evansville area, which is my location, I have my contact information, which I wanted to ask the three of you. Kaylee Simmons, you mentioned a few times that when you see a profile of someone that you want to reach out to, regardless if they are open to work or not, you're going to reach out. So is having your contact information readily available in this upper part of the profile significantly important? And what types of contact information should one have in an effective profile?
Definitely. So whenever I'm reaching out, I typically reach out just via the LinkedIn direct message. So it'll kind of be in your inbox from there. I know also it will send you kind of an email communication if you have that set up, or it'll say like, Kaylee Simmons just sent you a message. But I also do think it's beneficial to have potentially your email address, your personal email address, or even your work email, if that's the best way to communicate to you, available on your LinkedIn profile. Sometimes if I send a message and I don't hear anything, you can kind of see typically, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Facebook, where it might say that somebody is active or somebody has been active like 20 minutes ago or whatever it may be. I might see that somebody's not been active in about a week or so. So I might reach out to them via that email that is accessible on their profile, just kind of as a second message. And then from there, I don't want to ever bombard somebody with a bunch of emails or messages or anything like that. So kind of after that second attempt, I kind of let it flow to see if they respond from there. But typically I do just message directly through the LinkedIn inbox.
Lindsey or Kaylee, anything else on contact or?
I don't think so. I'm not in the recruiting standpoint. I was looking at my own and had my student email still on there. So I needed to update that, which I've done. So thank you, Kaylee, for that reminder.
Making sure that your profile page is up to date is going to
Right.
be the key conclusion points. So thank you for foreshadowing there, Kaylee.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I agree with Kaylee having an outdated profile, but also your updated email is key. That's how we communicate with, especially like our alumni when we're reaching out to them. So I definitely think updated information, especially your email, is key.
When we were talking the other day, Kaylee Simmons mentioned to us that there are many, many key things that she looks for in recruitment of candidates. And, one of them is location. I mean, at USI, our jobs are all pretty much on campus and they're in person. Thus, we're more likely to recruit individuals who are in the general area. So that sort of occurred to me that my current physical location might be something that a recruiter is taking into account as they search. If I do live in the greater Evansville area, but I am open to work anywhere and relocating, is there a way that I can convey that on a LinkedIn profile? In other words, Kaylee Simmons, in your search, you might not pick up someone who is currently living in Chicago, but that person living in Chicago might be a great fit, and she might be willing to relocate to come to USI. Are there any thoughts on that?
I will say, I do think if somebody opts to have that open to work banner, I think it does allow them to be a little bit more specific, kind of on like the back end. Not that it publicly says it, but maybe on the back end where recruiters are looking to say like open to any remote opportunities, open to relocation or things along those lines. So then I do think that it prompts those people to maybe show up whenever I'm looking through the sourcing, and then they'll show up that way just because they've indicated on their open to work that they are open to those new opportunities anywhere in the US or anywhere, whatever it might be. I do know with more of like those remote opportunities that I think that they look for people that are anywhere or that are currently working remote or things along those lines. So that's why I know sometimes I even get some messages, and some people on this call might have as well, where I get an opportunity and it is like in California, and I don't obviously currently live there, and I don't have any plans on moving right now or anything. But I think that it really depends on the industry. I will say whenever I am sourcing, I don't just look in Evansville. I will say I look in Evansville and typically the surrounding areas. So I'll put in like Henderson, Newburgh, and kind of like within the radius. But I definitely think that I could be missing some opportunities when doing that for those people that could be in Chicago or Ohio or some of those other states nearby and open to relocation. So I don't think it hurts if somebody is open and, let's say they have their open to work on, and, maybe their employer knows they're actively looking or actively moving. Just putting a post saying like, I am open to opportunities located in Indiana, Ohio, or anything like that. I know sometimes I've seen that on my page where it's kind of like a milestone type thing shows up where it says like they change their profile picture to open to work, and then it shows where they are open as well. But one other thing I wanted to mention too is, let's say somebody, that does live in Chicago or lives out of state, and they know they want to come to Evansville. They're like, I would love to work at USI, and they're kind of looking at our page, and maybe they do see my name. They are always welcome to send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to respond if they're saying, hello, I'm so-and-so, I'm looking for these types of opportunities. Can you tell me about what openings you have? And I'm always happy to talk about any of the openings that USI currently has. I always say, and this is something that we talked about a little bit earlier this week when meeting, is just the etiquette of it. If somebody messaged me and says, need job, or what jobs do you have, with kind of no salutation or nothing like that, I might not be as open and prioritize it. But if somebody, seems very interested, they're very polite about it, they're not really abrasive, I'm always happy to talk to them or even get on a phone call and talk to them more about them as well.
Haley, I have a question, and I'm interjecting, so you don't have to answer this in a long form or anything, but I'm curious. So I know on my LinkedIn, like I just have the free LinkedIn, and it tells the person when you're viewing their profile. Do you ever have that happen to you on your personal profile where you're reaching out to potential employers? And if so, did those people become a little more appealing to you if they're like creeping on you, if that makes sense?
So I will say, like, I know, especially whenever like I have sent a message to somebody, I wonder if they think like, okay, is this legit or not? And then I'll see where they've viewed my profile, and then they might have responded, or maybe they were just looking at my profile. And so then that'll prompt me to like, okay, who was that? And kind of look back. And then sometimes there's a connection made from there. And, I might message them like, thanks for the connection, or, feel free to message me if you ever have any questions. And sometimes that has prompted people to maybe take that extra step to talk to me a little bit more. But sometimes too, they might just like look, and then I like look at theirs, and then that's all.
You're good. Yeah. I just didn't know if that like subtle interaction would prompt anything from your end, or if that was just
I definitely think that it helps me keep their name in mind too, especially whenever I'm looking through our applicants, kind of through our careers, kind of on the back end on the career site through Page Up. I'm like, that name sounds familiar. Where do I know that name? And they'll be, oh, they looked at my profile. Or I've had interviews scheduled, and I could see that somebody looked at my profile before the interview, probably just to kind of like know, like, okay, who am I meeting with today? So I always appreciate that extra step too, and kind of that research that they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
This is such an important part at the top here of the profile with the picture and the background photo and the headline, the name. It's really how you are conveying that first impression. Before we move down a little bit, there are just two other elements on this profile, and that is the University of Southern Indiana and Nexa Vision Consulting icons and names respectively along the right-hand side. Lindsey, can you tell us what that's signifying and why that might be critical to include or to omit from an effective profile?
Yeah, so that pulls from your education and experience sections. I think it's best to really connect with, if your institution or your company is on LinkedIn, to connect with their profiles so you have a broader network. So anyone that also is in that institution or company could see that you're also connected with them.
Perfect. Could we scroll down a little bit to the next section of the profile? So beneath the section we've been looking at, there is this next section in the About part, where a LinkedIn user has the opportunity to provide a summary of basically who they are. And I believe LinkedIn allows that summary to be up to 2,600 words, which that's a lot. That's about 10 pages double spaced. I'm not sure I would advocate that much, as I'm not sure who'd read that much. But this is a really important part of the profile in which you get to, create a narrative that is either, I think, going to attract someone to want to learn more, to want to know more about you, or not. But we'll start with you, Kaylee Johnson. What are your thoughts on the importance of the About section, the summary here?
Yeah, from an organizational standpoint, I would say we obviously want it to be reputable and consistent with our website and our overall brand and personality. So I think from the university perspective, we want that to be consistent with our messaging across platforms. Very important that we're able to put up a professional front in terms of when Kaylee Simmons is maybe reaching out to a potential employer and they're interested more in learning more about the University of Southern Indiana. We want to make sure on our profile that we look reputable and we're able to provide that consistent voice and tone and look across all of our platforms.
Lindsey?
I think visually, it does allow you to put a lot of content here, but on mobile, it's really gonna truncate what you see. So having the most important information, what you want to get across, is key to have at the top. But if you do have a lot of information you want to include here, having line breaks like this example would be beneficial so they can kind of visually see where you're going with what you're talking about.
Perfect. And from your perspective, Kaylee Simmons?
I definitely think I would not use all those words or anything. Don't write a 10-page paper, because I don't think anyone's going to read that. I think keeping it kind of short and sweet, I think this is kind of a perfect amount. And I also think this is where people can talk about like where their interests lie and kind of what their future looks like or what they're hoping for as well. I do like how this says, like, let's connect, whether you're interested in exchanging ideas, exploring new opportunities. I think that is like perfect because it lets me know too, like, okay, they would definitely be interested in talking. So I probably have a higher likelihood of hearing something back from this candidate compared to hearing back from somebody that might not have this information in their about section. So I also think this is where people can toot their own horn a little bit and talk about some of their wins too. I've seen a lot of people maybe more in like the sales field that might say, I won this award or #1 salesperson in this district or something like that. And so that could prompt, not that I'm looking for salespeople here at USI, but that could prompt if other sales industries are looking for new salespeople, where they can think, okay, like this is the person we need on our team. They're kind of seeing those wins.
Yeah, I've always heard advice that the About section here should always include something about what you have to offer to someone or an organization and how they will benefit from you. And that second paragraph here really touches on that. particularly after the comma. I specialize in guiding organizations through transformative journeys, and my work has led to measurable success in fostering innovation. That tells me what she can do for me as an employer, as a hiring agent, or whatever that might be. And I just wanted to circle back to Lindsey made a great comment a moment ago that, we're looking at a desktop view, but a lot of people utilize LinkedIn and, other social medias on mobile in some ways more than on the desktop. So always take into account how it appears to someone viewing your profile in that mobile view. Let's see. Lindsey, can we move down again below the About section? And here, can you, Lindsey, sort of walk us through what we're looking at on this activity section?
Sure. So the activity section is kind of what you're doing on LinkedIn. Either you're reposting content, you're creating content to post to your connections. So this example looks like they kind of have a mix of everything. They've reposted something from their company. They've also connected with their company and tagging, saying that, they're happy to connect with them and join with them on their next adventure. So I think in this section, at least visually, you would want to have a good breakout of content here. You would want to repost your industry content. You want to repost your own thoughts and your own content. But I think also a big win in this section is the media that you also attach with it. That could also bring some visual appeal to your LinkedIn page. And then I also wanted to point out that you can see your replies and things as well. I think that might come in a later section, but also be mindful of what you're putting out in LinkedIn as well.
And Kaylee Johnson, from your perspective, what is the value in, like, let's say that middle image, reposting content from the organization at which I work, or how does that benefit me in getting my profile elevated, my brand noticed?
Yeah, I would say kind of back to the point earlier that I think when people are tagging us and they're sharing their experiences at the university, we're going to get to know them a little bit quicker, and they're going to be a familiar face that we're going to call on for any needs that we might have or potential maybe employment here at the university. I would agree with Lindsey's point that on the USI side, when I'm managing the account in terms of putting out content, whether it be press release content or promoting an event, whatever it might be, trying to make that very visually appealing, because we want, again, to attract people to come work at USI. We want to show off what we have going on here. We have a lot going on all the time. So being able to share that visually is very effective because people are more likely to stop on a visual, aesthetically pleasing photo rather than they are if it's just like a graphic or no photo or visual at all with it. So.
And Kaylee Simmons, when you see a profile picture, a headline, and maybe a summary that all look good to you, that this might be a candidate I'm interested in reaching out to, do you, in your role, look at one's activity as a gauge of reaffirming your initial reaction or contradicting it? Do you look at, what types of thing that an individual is posting to measure, for lack of a better word at this moment, like their professionalism?
Definitely. I've definitely seen some profiles where they've kind of let out a big paragraph about why they left their last employer and why nobody else should ever work there. And so it kind of leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. So I definitely think having a positive attitude and reacting to positive content as well, just because it is something that everybody can see. I know on other social media platforms you can kind of keep your likes private or things like that. On LinkedIn, everybody can see everything, so just kind of being mindful of what you're reacting to, what you're liking, and then also just what you're personally posting as well.
Great. And Lindsey, can we scroll down again a little bit to the next section? So here, one has the opportunity to list their professional experiences and also their education. Once again, Lindsey, can I turn to you to just sort of walk us through here, what we're looking at and how one ought to build this out to be most effective?
Yeah, so this is kind of pushed together in one section, but in LinkedIn, I believe it's two sections. But again, you can connect if your company or institution has a LinkedIn profile. You should connect with those that are already created just to build on your network. Um, I think that having it up to date as well is key in this section.
I'm going to ask, Kaylee Simmons a question here. This example that we're looking at doesn't have it, but let's just say I had a gap in employment or a gap in experience that that sort of pops out. If my Elevate Media Group ended in 2015 and I started with Lumina Tech Solutions in 2016, do you recommend addressing a gap in employment on a LinkedIn profile like this, or is that something that's best discussed later?
I think it's best discussed later. I think especially during 2020 and kind of some of the years following, that's something very common that I have seen, just given the pandemic and everything that occurred. And that is something that is questioned during the interview. So, it's not something I look too closely into on LinkedIn, because I also do know that there's other case scenarios where, they could have had something personal going on in their life, a medical thing, anything along those lines. And that's something that I can address during an interview to get just a little bit more information.
Perfect. And before we move to the next session, Kaylee Johnson, anything to add here?
Nothing additional from my perspective. No, thank you
Yeah.
though.
Perfect. And then, if we move down to the next session on licenses and certification. I'm going to just talk about this for a minute. You saw in the previous image that the education that our LinkedIn profile individual had was at the University of Southern Indiana with a bachelor's and an MBA. And you see that here on their licenses and certifications with the MBA in marketing. There's a little button beneath that, show credential. Just about a year ago, USI started issuing diplomas in addition to the physical copy that one receives when walking across the stage or after that. We also issue now a digital diploma that can be added to one's LinkedIn page. So if I click on that button, up will pop a digital image of my USI diploma, which really I think gives further authenticity and validity to the claim that I'm making here. Lindsey, can you start with some other commentary on the significance of licenses and certifications here, and what are the types of things that one should consider including?
Yeah, sure. So you have the opportunity in this section to add whatever license certificate that you've earned either at an institution or in the industry. Again, you can connect to their profile if they have one. You can also link out to the proof of that certificate or license as well if that company provides the URL to you. I highly recommend that because, as Dean Dixon indicated, your future employer could click on that and see the proof of that information. Also keeping this up to date. I know that's a constant theme here, but keeping it up to date and removing those that may have expired, or adding those that are new to your profile is key.
I would say,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Kaylee.
Dr. Dixon, I was just gonna say, I know that this is beneficial for the user that's posting these credentials, but I would also say that that adds some credibility for the institution that they're receiving or organization that they're receiving their credentials from. So I know from my perspective, running the USI page, that would be helpful just to further give us more credit for the work that we're doing as well.
So below the licenses and certifications, see a little section called skills, and actually up with the experience section, one can add certain skills below those various positions that one has held. There's a lot of significance on the skills section. How many skills should one include? What are too many? And the role that those play in a profile and getting noticed by a recruiter. I'm going to turn to you again, Kaylee Simmons. Can you talk to us about the importance of skills on LinkedIn and how you use that in your role?
Definitely. So skills are, I would say, one of the most important parts of the LinkedIn profile. I know we got a message in the chat from somebody that kind of this relates kind of perfectly to that, asking like, where am I finding these keywords I keep talking about whenever I am looking at these profiles? And it's going to be the skill section. I would say skill section number 1, and then maybe that kind of header title number 2. But this is kind of important where you can keep things updated. I know whenever I have an open position and I'm going to be sourcing on LinkedIn, I'll kind of look at the requirements. I'm going to look at some of the things that job's doing, and then I'm just going to take some keywords from that job description and input it in the LinkedIn. And it's going to show me profiles that have those skills or have similar skills on there. So I think keeping those up to date, I don't think there's a limit to how many skills you can put on there. I probably wouldn't want to have more than 100, just because then it can start getting a little there, you're kind of scrolling for a long time on those skills. And I do also think some skills are kind of, can sometimes be left unsaid. I know industry specific skills, definitely. I know, for example, on my profile, I have, interviewing, resume reviewing, things along those lines. But then also things like such as like attention to detail and things along that. But one thing I do want to mention is if you're putting those skills on there, let's say you're putting attention to detail, make sure that your profile, you're kind of going through it with a fine-tooth comb, because I've had people put attention to detail and then there's like a misspelling in their header or something along those lines. And so sometimes it can make me be like, well, it's not going to really shy me away completely from reaching out, but it's just something that I keep in mind. So I definitely think this is skills and industry knowledge is very, very important.
I know that many of you on the webinar here either have skills listed or have seen others profiles with skills listed, and the ability exists to endorse those skills. So, if I were looking at Kaylee's profile and saw that one of her skills was presenting at webinars on effective LinkedIn profiles, I could go ahead and endorse that. Kaylee, is it important to have not just skills listed, but endorsements of those skills by other parties?
Definitely thinks it's a nice extra touch, just because it does show me that like, okay, somebody else is like kind of backing that up and trust that person can do that skill. So I will say it's not like I'm not going to reach out to somebody because they've not been endorsed on that certain skill, but I do think it kind of puts them up a little bit higher when I'm reaching out to people, just because I'm like, okay, so let's say we have 2 candidates and I'm only, I only have 1 credit to reach out to one. One of them has an endorsed skill and the other doesn't. I'm probably going to reach out to that person that has that endorsed skill, just because, like I mentioned, somebody else is backing them up and publicly saying, yes, Kaylee can do that, or so-and-so can do that. And it just adds a little bit more weight to their profile.
Kaylee Johnson, any thoughts on skills and endorsements and what we're looking at here in the construction of an effective profile?
I would say, just kind of going back to my own like personal creeping from the USI account, I would say that it is helpful to see skills, and like if students are interacting with us, to get a better feeling if we're going to write a feature story or maybe a press release about the work that they're doing, whatever it might be. That does give me a little more insight into what they're skilled in, who's endorsed them, that kind of thing. But I would say Kaylee Simmons is probably using that a lot more heavily than I am, and Lindsey as well.
Perfect. Kaylee Simmons, you mentioned a minute ago in your skills that one of them was resume building, and it sort of made me think of something I wanted to ask. But we all have a CV or a resume, and hopefully have a LinkedIn page that's effective after the workshop today. But I've seen some people with a traditional resume or a traditional CV that, at the top where they have their name and contact information, that they include also their LinkedIn profile. Is that something that you see often on an effective CV or resume? And would you recommend that we include that?
Yeah, I will say, I feel like I'm seeing it a little bit more commonly, like whenever I first started in recruiting and human resources back in 2020, it wasn't as common, but I think over the past couple of years, it's something we're seeing a little bit more. And I just think it's an extra added touch on the resume. Just know whenever you're putting that on there, that the recruiter probably is going to go on there and look at it. So make sure that the information on your resume does match the information on your LinkedIn, and make sure it's accurate. And, I think that's also another place you can highlight more on your skills. On your resume, obviously, you cannot list 100 skills on there, just
Right.
because it would take many, many pages, and the recruiter would be scrolling for a really long time. But maybe you have some of those big skills you're really going to highlight on your resume, but then you have your LinkedIn profile. They can even look on there and look a little bit deeper and see a little bit more on your LinkedIn profile. So I think if you're comfortable including that, it's just an extra added touch, and I would definitely recommend it.
Perfect. When I just clicked on my own contact in my LinkedIn profile, it's linkedin.com/in/Michael-Dixon-820592. That's kind of a mouthful. Lindsey, can I customize that URL to my profile, and do you recommend doing so?
Yeah, you sure can. Not exactly sure where, I think in the settings, but you can do that. And I do definitely recommend doing that because, um, as you said, your URL is not easily able to give out just like randomly. So, I would definitely update that.
Perfect. So we are closing in on the end of the hour. Wanted to ask those of you in the audience if there are any questions you have that we haven't touched on. Well, seeing nothing in the chat, I just wanted to, again, take the opportunity to encourage you to go to USI School of Graduate Studies and follow us, become part of, this community. I, as a LinkedIn user, find it to be really rewarding. I am connected with a number of my former students, and it brings me tremendous joy to see them post some of the amazing things that they're doing now in their careers and in their professional lives. And I really love nothing more than to send a little quick note and say, congratulations on that accolade, on that achievement. But in my current role too, I really am always on the lookout for amazing things our alumni and current students are doing. And, one of our showcase events each year is our graduate student colloquium. We've held alumni profiles. So, being able to maintain contact with you, see what you're doing, uh, maybe I'll reach out to you. I would love to reach out to you at some point and ask you to participate in an alumni panel, to sort of give back to our current students. How can we help them? That's really, in my mind, the real value of LinkedIn, from one perspective. Obviously, it has the value, as we've been emphasizing today, for you as you are looking for that next step in your professional career and your professional search. But building that network and being able to connect with you and see what you're doing is something I really tremendously appreciate. And it's the best part of the job is seeing what you are all accomplishing. Lindsey, Kaylee, any closing thoughts for our participants?
I just wanted to say thank you all for hopping on. It's good to see so many people on here, and we appreciate you listening to us.
Definitely. Thanks for joining. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, you're more than welcome to send me an invite as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Feel free to find us on LinkedIn, as well as on Graduate Studies page. All of our socials are listed on our website.
I agree with that. Each of you who joined us today will be receiving a note, an email from us shortly, thanking you for attending and with a small little survey asking your thoughts on the workshop and soliciting ideas from you on other workshops that we might be able to put together for your benefit. So in closing, I want to thank Lindsey, Kaylee Johnson, and Kaylee Simmons. You guys have been amazing. I think the best thing I did was collecting the three of you into this panel. It was really everything that I hoped it would be. Thank you so much. And then lastly, thank you to all of the students who joined the workshop today. Again, this was to celebrate Graduate Student Appreciation Week, and I cannot tell you how much that we appreciate the fact that you've chosen the University of Southern Indiana as the place at which to pursue your graduate degree. We're extraordinarily fortunate to have you here, and thank you again. For those of you who are graduating next month, I look forward to seeing you up on the stage soon. If there's anything you need, just please let me know, and thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and enjoy the weekend.